This is a 35-gallon drum, and I took this drum and I made it into a Cyclone for my dust collection system. And you can make one too. I'll show you how I did it. You're watching On the Mark with Mark. I actually went through several iterations with adding the first stage to my dust collection system. What I have here is a single stage dust collector with the fan and the motor, and everything had gone through the fan into the filters. And that was okay until, little pieces of wood start going through and you hear them ping through that fan, and probably won't be good after a while. So I thought, well, I'll just add a can to the beginning of this where those heavier big things can drop out and then they can go to the rest of the fan. And what I did was I used a small shop vac, and you can still see here's the top of the shop vac here, and these are the buckles that held it together, but it was only about this deep. And I thought, well, that'll be good enough. So I hooked it up that way. Well, there was so much wind blowing through there that nothing stayed in there. It would clank around and make a ton of noise for a while and eventually go through the fan. So I thought, all right, that's not deep enough. Let's get a full-size can. So there, I put this on here, 35-gallon can. I thought, well, now that'll be enough to get things to drop out. And some things did start dropping out, but no dust stayed in there. It all got sucked up and ended up in the bags. And the pieces of wood, little pieces that did end up in there were spinning around all the time and just making a racket. So it was also intolerable. So I came up with the third system. And of course, what you need if you're going to do something like that is a Cyclone. So this looks like a 35-gallon drum by itself. But inside here, I have built the cone that makes this a Cyclone. And it was really easy to build. And one of the things that made it easy was that it's all contained inside of this can. So when I finally got there's a piece of aluminum that I cut into the pie shape and coiled it up and shoved it down in there. It just went in there and just took the shape of the cone. And it just worked beautiful and so simple. I've seen where people are making their own Cyclones and they have a hard time making the joint between the cone, and my cone comes right up to this bead right here, and then the flat part. Well, this just fit right in there. So let's open this up and I'll show you what it looks like inside. Before I open it up, what you see down here is another 35-gallon drum. And then here's the tube where all of the particles that get caught by the Cyclone drop down through and go into this drum right here. So I just made a simple lid for this, and it drops off, and then the drum is on wheels, and I can pull it out of the way, and then this comes loose, and you can see some of the dust that gets caught on there. Also, I put a nice foam gasket around the edge of that so that it seals. And remember, this is on the vacuum side, so all that does is get sucked down tighter when it's running. It's not trying to blow it apart. So that works out easy. Next, you'll see where I used the buckles from the shop vac to hold this can onto the lid. This is the lid that was the shop vac. Here, I've got another shop vac that I can show you. This is an old used shop vac, but you can see the type of buckles that it's got there that hold the lid on. Those are the same ones I used here. There's 3 of them here, and I actually took the handles off of the shop vac that I used. Not this one, this one I had from a long time ago. So now you just pull these off. Lower it down, and inside here is my Cyclone. And then you can see where I use some actual duct tape. This is the foil type, not like duct tape. I suppose the new Gorilla Glue would probably work. And then on the bottom, you'll see this is one of the dust collection ports from the parts that came with my dust collector. This was actually part of a splitter. The dust collector comes off with a 5-inch tube, and then there was a splitter that's sometimes called a pair of pants that split it into 2 4-inch tubes. And this is one of those 4-inch tubes. And what I did is I put it in the oven and I heated it up so it was soft. And then after cutting this 4-inch diameter hole in the bottom of this can, I set that in there. And then when I jammed the aluminum down inside, what was left of that pair of pants that I'd cut apart was soft enough that it just conformed to the aluminum and made for a real nice seal on there. But you could use a lot of different pieces of ductwork attachment for this part right here. I could have used one of these dust collection attachments too. That could have been set on the inside, and then I probably would have cut this little flange off and heated it up and then got the aluminum to fit down inside of this. Or if you've got a broken blast gate, anything that gets you down to this size of a diameter tube so that your hose can fit onto it. That's all you need to do down here. Now, inside of here, and I'm not going to be able to show this to you, but I can kind of show you. There's a screw right here, and there's one down here. And then if you look up the side, there's one right there and there. What I did was I cut 2 pieces of 3/4-inch plywood that were a triangle that started right up here, right below this little bead here. So the plywood starts right here. It's a right triangle, comes clear down to the bottom, and then it comes out to where the 4-inch diameter hole is. And then the triangle goes up there. And then there's 2 of them in here. Here's the other screws. So what that did was, when I went to cram the aluminum down inside there, that plywood just forced it to go into the right shape. And then it ended up here right at that bead, so that I had a nice place where I was able to tape off, and the aluminum just fit right in there real neat. Now, also, let me show you how I came up with the pattern for this piece of aluminum. So that is really solid down in there. I'm not hitting where the plywood is. The plywood is up here on the 2 sides. Right there, it's just super solid in there. Okay, so here's what I did. Now, if you have access to a CAD program and you can draw this cone and then flatten it out, boy, you're way ahead of the game there. Do it that way. You'll be able to just nail it. What I did was I was able to get myself in the ballpark, and then I cut this out, and then I put it in there, and then I had a little trimming to do, and I pulled it out and trimmed it a little bit and put it back in again, and then I had a nice fit. So let me show you how I got to that point. Okay, I've got 2 sticks here, and they're long enough to reach up into this can, and I'll go in 2 directions, and I'm gonna push them up in there until I touch that bead. Okay, and then I'm gonna clamp it here, and I'll show you from the other side what it looks like inside there. Here's what it looks like on the inside. Now, I don't have it exactly in the right place right now. This is a good place where you need a helper, somebody to hold these in here in exactly the right place while you clamp it on the other side. But I'm here by myself, so I didn't have that opportunity, but I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes anyway, so it'll be okay. Coming down on the outside edge here, right here is the intersection where if I was making a complete cone, that is where the point of the cone would be. So I have that marked 36 inches. I said before that it was a 4x4 sheet of aluminum. It was actually a 3-foot square, so 1 cubic yard of aluminum. Or if you're watching in the future, it could be a cubic meter. So here's how I started this. Using another piece of wood as a compass, I came off the corner here and then I drew a radius around there. So it would be something about like that. Okay, so you cut a radius like that. That's the outside. The other dimension that I didn't show you was 9 inches down here. So you come up here 9 inches and make another radius like that. Now we're not going to use the whole sweep of that radius to make this cone, but it doesn't hurt to have it in there, because as you're folding it down in there, you know, it kind of fights you a little bit, and you want a little bit of overlap, so this allows for that overlap. So we've got a 36-inch radius coming off this way, and then you've got a, is that still on? Yeah, a 9-inch radius going this way. Okay, so that will give you the sheet you need to make the cone on the inside. Take your own measurements, don't go by what I have here. I'm not 100% sure that's a 35-gallon drum, but I think it is. Probably you guys know it's not a 55-gallon drum, which if I had a 55-gallon drum, I think I would use that for the catcher drum underneath, because that would mean I'd have to empty that drum less often. Although there's a bit of a trade-off there. The 35-gallon drum is pretty easy to haul up the stairs and dump out. I think 55 might get a bit heavy. Surprising how heavy sawdust can be, but it does get heavy. Here is how the attachment for the Cyclone is handled. And what I did is I come straight down into the can, and then I take off with a 90-degree fitting right away, and I cut off part of the edge here. I'll take some better pictures of them and insert them here, where you'll be able to see where I cut off part of the 90, which this is what gives all of the sawdust the idea that it's going to start spinning around in there. And then up here on this side, which shows up in the photographs too, this is where the air is going in. And this is not exactly centered on the Cyclone like you see professional built Cyclones are made. And in fact, a professional one would have a tube that comes down inside and would come below this point right here. And I've considered adding that to this one because some dust does get by this Cyclone, but the vast majority of it ends up in the can right below this. So this is still very worthwhile. Of course, all the big chips end up down there, but a little bit of dust does get by, and I'll do a demonstration in a little bit. Now, another way you could go, if you want to go above and beyond the call, is you could try to come up with a way to get your inlet to come in the side. And I didn't want to go that way. I didn't know how I would seal it. It just didn't seem like it would go very well. And this, I thought, worked out pretty well. And then, I don't know if you can see, on top, I have the whole thing suspended by threaded rods here. So I was able to level it up just exactly the way I wanted it when I was doing it. Now, the other thing that I've got going here, when I've looked at a lot of videos online, and now I made mine before there was a YouTube, so I didn't have too many resources to see how to go about doing this. But one thing I did, and from before I bought my dust collector, I wanted this type, because if you recognize this, this is upside down. I'm hanging it from the ceiling. But I wanted one that had the air inlet close to, well, it started out at the floor, but I knew I was going to hang it from the ceiling, because then I could have all of this stuff up at the ceiling, because all my ductwork runs around my shop at the ceiling, and then it drops down to each one of the machines. So I lost one of the drops, which would be to the dust collector. So instead of it coming up and going across the ceiling and then coming back down again, mine just stays up there. So a little less ductwork, which means less friction, which means better suction. Also, this is a 1550 CFM fan in here, and it's oversized for what I'm doing. So I knew that if I got a little bit crazy on the amount of bends and all that I did, that I had a lot of oomph to overcome that. The other thing that I see a lot of people do is they turn that fan 90 degrees and then they'll place it right on top of their Cyclone. And that seems like a really good idea, but I never even considered doing that. I never considered it because motors are built to be either horizontal shaft or vertical shaft motors. And it's different kinds of bearings inside that take the load. You know, the load is always going by gravity. Well, if you turn the motor this way, now the bearings that are in there for this kind of motor are actually designed for this way. The races should be on the top and the bottom of the ball bearings instead of on the sides like this motor has. So I didn't think it was possible or a good idea to turn this 90 degrees. So that's why I kept it this way. And then this makes my 90 and then this makes my other 90, which is kind of a waste. Now, a lot of people are doing it that way and looks like it works. And maybe that's shortening the life of the bearings in that motor, but us home woodworkers, we're probably never gonna wear out the motor in our dust collectors anyway. So if I was doing it over again, I probably would turn it, because to take advantage of this 90 degrees right here and turn it this way is a pretty nice way to go. That takes a lot of drag out of the system because you don't have those pieces of ductwork. But that's why I did mine the way I did it, is because I didn't want to turn that 90 degrees. The other thing you might notice here is I've got vibration isolators. There's this piece of angle iron, which has got the motor mount on, and then there's a vibration isolator right there. And then this is bolted to the frame that had the wheels on it, where it wheeled around the floor. And then this is bolted to the ceiling with some lag bolts, and that's also got vibration isolators on it to try to alleviate the noise coming through the ceiling here, because we're right below our family room right here. So when this runs, it's loud. It's loud up in the family room. You have to turn the volume up on the TV. It's never me, so I mean, it's kind of nasty. We're empty nesters here, so it's just my wife. She moves usually up to the front room, or sometimes she'll go to our bedroom and read or whatever it is she's doing. But I'm just saying that this system here transfers a lot of noise to the floor. So pros and cons that way. Let's make some sawdust. This can was mostly empty when I started, so let's have a look at it now. And got a bunch of fluff in there. Okay, that's one place. This bag I haven't cleaned out in some time. There's a lot in there. Well, that was great. I dropped the bag and a whole cloud of dust just blew off in that direction, so that was wonderful. Let's add the can to this, and then we'll shove everything through the dust collector again, and we'll see how it separates it this time. Okay, I have the whole dust collection system put back together. The bag is back on and the can has been reinstalled. Now we're going to run all this through there and see how it goes. Let's see how it is. The vast majority went in here. And you can see there's some very fine dust in there. I don't know, I really want to take this bag off again. The fan is still winding down, so there's a little bit of pressure in there. Okay, I can feel there's that much. That's how much fine dust then ended up getting past the Cyclone. I'm real happy with how this Cyclone works. It wasn't real expensive to make. I don't know how sensitive these are to diameter and CFMs and all that, but this one seemed to balance out just about right. So that's how I've done the Cyclone two-stage dust collection system in my shop. My dust collector is it's actually a Reliant dust collector. This company is no longer in business. There used to be a mail order catalog called Trendline, and they sold woodworking equipment, and this was kind of their store brand. It's a 2 horsepower dust collector, and if my memory serves me, God, it's either a 1200 or 2400, probably 1200 CFM fan. And just because the fan will do that many CFMs doesn't mean the filters and all the ductwork and everything can do it too. But you know, you got to come up with some way of measuring things. I'll do a little more research, and if I come up with the actual number, then you'll see it show up. That's it. Thanks for watching my video on dust collection system. I think there's a few ideas here that you won't see in other places. I hope if you try to do this that you're successful like I was, and thanks for watching my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.